Oleksandr Usyk, the pound for pound king and the heavyweight champ, defending his unified titles, but ultimately becoming two-time undisputed, knocking out Daniel Dubois in 5 pretty action-packed rounds. I'm gonna let you cook. You were there, but Dubois did do what we both said he needed to do. It's just Oleksandr Usyk seemed to have a brilliant premeditated strategy to anticipate set adjustments from Daniel Dubois. And I think there was one moment in the second or third round where we talked about heading into this fight, Dubois, like he did against Joshua, he has to get downhill behind his double jab and be on the front foot more, get off first and not wait on Usyk so much. There was one moment in the second or third or fourth, one of those rounds before the stoppage where Usyk gave it to him. Like, go ahead, have your double jab. And just took the step back and then counterpunched with his left hand with bad intentions. And it was like, that was the fight in a microcosm to me. It was, yep, Usyk has the perfect adjustment for your adjustments. And this was a different Usyk in this second fight. Go ahead, Raheem.
I'm gonna make this a back and forth more so than me
Yeah,
pontificating,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
breaking
yeah.
it down, because also the fact that you're very much removed from this narrative. It's, the way you cover the sport is kind of opposite to the way I cover the sport and um, our approach to how we get at fights. I'm a traveling man, right? You're a family man. I'm on the road chasing boxing, and you are in the hub fucking breaking it down like a scientist. So I like that there's a contrast here, and the fact that I don't even know. Have you ever met Dubois or Usyk? Have you
Usyk,
been?
yeah. Yeah, a few
Okay,
times.
not
Yeah.
Dubois.
But not Dubois. Nope.
Right. So this is a very uh, European uh, oriented fight, obviously. And the narrative for both guys gets a little personal for me. I know Don Charles very well. I've covered multiple, Dubois fights. I've seen him at every stage. Usyk the same. In fact, I think the first fight, which you might have been at, maybe that's where you met him, was in the Forum, really early days.
Right.
And so I've been ringside for Usyk and in his camp with special access and coverage from the beginning, really. This was a clash, I think, of the young generation besting or attempting to dethrone the dominant generation. Usyk is 38 years old. And at the press conference, final one, he said, 38 is not old. And it's not unless it is. People asking for Usyk to be old in the build up to the fight is because they were looking and reaching for something that could justify how this fight is a 50-50 matchup or how Dubois had a chance to win it based on more than what they've seen in the past. That's natural. And that's what we do also as pundits when asking questions of people participating in fights and coming up with our narratives. We look for ways in which this can be close or it can go against the favorite. And we're just playing with narratives. But the truth is that there was no indication that there was any decline from Usyk, that he was aging or there was going to be a lost step. It was all wishful thinking on the part of Dubois fans and simple spinning of yarn on the side of we pundits. What happened when the first bell rung was Dubois was prepared to execute the best possible game plan that he could have put together, and it was in the shape to do it. There was a moment of success in the third round. The double jab, followed by the right hand, I think was very effective with Usyk. Early in the fight in the first round, I think the pace of Dubois, the aggression of Dubois, Usyk on the back foot would have favored Dubois down the line in the fight. To your point, Usyk immediately made an adjustment. He was like, I can't fight this on the back foot. This is going to be a long night, and I'm not here for that. He made the adjustment in the second round, which is why, even though I thought Usyk won the second round as well, you see him changing. It was a little awkward. It wasn't as clear a victory. It wasn't a pretty round, but that's because the dynamic was changing. Then Dubois comes back on in the third with, again, success with the double jab, the 1-2. But however, he was already beginning to be confused by the adjustment that Usyk made. Dubois is a very blinder oriented fighter. He is not the kind of fighter that makes adjustments on the fly. He's not the kind of fighter that is doing a bunch of calculations about what his opponent is doing. He needs to be 100% bought in to whatever strategy he comes in with and live and die on that strategy. And what I believe happened is that Usyk made him start to think and question and reassess what was happening in real time. And when there's a glitch in the matrix for Dubois, Usyk comes on. That's the difference. I don't know if this fight goes the same way, or certainly not as early, if Dubois is able to stoically stay committed to the game plan he comes in with, tuck up and block some of these shots that are coming back, and the counter punch is what was confusing him. It's not like Usyk is a massive puncher. It's that Dubois was caught. He was just caught, confused, frozen, and then started to doubt what he was doing, and Usyk 100% capitalized on that. I mean, just for the first 3 rounds, did you see it that way?
Yeah, I mean, I just saw from Usyk just a different Usyk in this fight. He was punching with badder intentions earlier than I've ever seen him in a fight. Like he cranked it up late in that first Fury fight and dropped him by stepping, sitting down on his punches. But I just felt like he made a little adjust. He was a little bit less the feinty guy, and actually right around the fifth round, he did get to his feints right before he wound up stopping Dubois. But this was a little bit more quality over quantity punch output wise by Usyk until it was time to let the combination go to close the show.
And he's
But
in a 20 pounds heavier,
yeah,
20 pounds heavier, which is
Usyk
intentional.
came in that much heavier for this.
Yeah,
Well, some people were speculating he did that to absorb the body work. He knew ahead of
I think
time. Yeah,
he
but
did it to absorb the body work. I think he also did it to increase the punching power. I think he's also growing into, which is hard to say for a 38-year-old man, but I believe he's growing into the weight division. He felt the power of Dubois in the first fight. He knew what Dubois was coming to do, which was to run through him like a train, and he wanted to have a big enough body to resist that, absorb shots, and then deliver punishment in return. That was a big hook that he closed the show with. That all that
oh, he's
extra
throwing
20
big boy
pounds.
heavyweight punches now.
That's exactly that
Yeah.
extra those extra 20 was on that hook. You understand? And that is part of, I believe, the difference coming in knowing the assignment. However, you cannot take away from the Dubois camp what I believe to be putting their man in the best possible position to win. I know that sounds crazy to a fan who just watched 5 rounds, a fifth round knockout, 2 knockdowns, an obliterating big hook that stops the show. Dubois doesn't meet the 10 count. I get all of that. But if you look at what he came in the ring to do and the little flashes of success that he had, that was the best you were going to get. Dubois is obviously not going to outbox Usyk. Dubois is not the type of fighter who is just going to tie you up and maul you.
No,
His
if he
double
wanted a
jab
box,
and
it could have went like the first fight. If he wanted a box, he could have died the slow death. He died the
yeah,
quicker death in this one because he fought a either I'm gonna get you or I'm gonna get got kind of fight. And we asked that of guys put in Dubois' position where you're not gonna outbox a guy like Usyk. Well, okay, risk getting stopped to try to stop him, and that's what Dubois tried to do.
yeah, and what I think failed was his confidence in the double jab. Once that counter punch started coming back over the top, and part of the reason the counter punch was coming back over the top is because he started to lay it out there and hesitate with the double jab and was throwing singles early because he was surprised, I believe, that Usyk was able to get back at him and where the punches were coming from. Not so much the power, it was the pepper. It was really aggravating, frustrating, and made Daniel start thinking outside of his own game plan. And at that point, Usyk has you. That to me actually is the story of the fight. When people talk about how dominant Usyk was and the genius and all that, that was the genius of the fight. In the big highlight knockout was what you're going to see 1,000 times over the next 3 days to a week. But the mental game in there is what the biggest knockout punch of the night was.
Yeah, and it's what's so impressive is for Usyk, who at one point was just a blown up cruiserweight. I mean, as effective as he was, you could tell that he had to outspeed these guys, outpace these guys, use his quickness and feet. But for him to now come full circle in the heavyweight division and deliver bombs to knock out, to deliver a knockout like that against a legit top five heavyweight, a guy with a belt, it shows a great evolution on Usyk's part. And because to walk people why I was skeptical when he came to the heavyweight division. And I know you agreed with that skepticism, maybe for different reasons, but you agreed with it. Well, Usyk, he was a guy who uses little touch shots to set up hard shots, and I didn't know if that would work in the heavyweight division. I didn't know if they'd let you touch while you're touching to set up. They'd shoot on you down the middle and the physical strength and everything. And then Usyk, even the way his head movement was unorthodox to a viewer like me. Usually, head movement it looks different coming from North America, or even Manny Pacquiao's head movement is side bobbing and weaving, and that's eventually what Usyk did. But Usyk didn't get low with his head movement a lot coming up, and so I thought like a lot of fighters would be able to do to him what Tony Bellew did in the early half of their fight. Tony Bellew was able to land a lot of right hands through the center against Usyk, and I thought guys that would land those right hands in the heavyweight division would be a big problem for him. But he continued just evolve and evolve and get better and get better. And at 38, I think in the heavyweight division, he's fighting as good as he's ever fought these last 5 or 6 fights. He's way better than when he first got to the division and had to fight Witherspoon and Chisora and those guys. This version of Usyk might have knocked out that version of Chisora that gave him so many problems a couple years ago. The way he's able to sit down and has developed his power. And like a scientist, the guy seems to know, he dials up. I'll sit down on the punch at 72%. No, for Dubois, I'm going to sit down on it at this percent. And it's just incredibly impressive. And the guy is easily an all-time great now. You could put him in discussions. Him against Muhammad Ali isn't a blasphemous discussion in terms of who would win and all that. They're about the same size, and there's only a handful of heavyweights all time I'd pick over him in terms of accomplishments and over him head to head. I think he's certainly a top 10 heavyweight now, and a pound for pound an all-time great in Usyk, and a guy that had to earn it. He wasn't one of the anointed ones by a lot of us in the media. He had to come up in one of the least glamorous divisions north of featherweight at cruiserweight, and now, I don't know what else to say, man. He is a great fighter.
When he came into the heavyweight division, you talk about the hesitation I had. Well, you're correct, and it was rooted almost solely in his punch resistance and whether or not he was going to be able to take shots from these big heavyweights. Appreciated his dynamic skill and his interesting angles and mindset going into a fight could be complicated for a lot of these heavyweights, but I just thought and these guys, especially, the size of the heavyweights now are just going to rain down shots on him and make all of that finesse
Right?
completely irrelevant. I thought later in his career as he faced the top heavyweights, this is back when he was in the Witherspoon era, when he was in his stage of fighting the Witherspoons and the Chisoras, like you mentioned, that I think the bigger, better guys are just going to fucking clobber him. And that's what we have to wait and see if this guy really is able to continue to execute what we're looking at with a better class, a bigger heavyweight with a solid, heavy punch. And you're right, the quality that we were seeing from Usyk against Witherspoon and Chisora, I don't think would beat these guys. The thing is, he continues to evolve. And now, with the Witherspoon fight in particular, gave me special pause. I was like, Witherspoon had way too much success. The big punch seemed
Oh
to
yeah, yeah.
rattle
Even
Usyk,
Witherspoon,
and
who was
that
well past whatever he ever had, and
right.
just to
So
sum it up, was super impressive. If I had to just simplify it for people, he outspeeded the best cruiserweights in the world to become the undisputed cruiserweight champion, and now as undisputed heavyweight champion, he's out heavyweighting a big, strong, hard punching heavyweight. He bombed out a big heavyweight after outspeeding cruiserweights once upon a time.
well
Special
that
fight.
That is a simple way to state it, and per brand, I'm going to complicate it because I
Okay.
don't think it is quite that simple. In
Right.
fact, only last night did I realize with the marvel of what we're actually looking at. It's not Usyk fighting Usyk's fight and beating all these guys because he's better at what he does. He is fighting the fight necessary for the opponent in front of him. And some might say, well, yeah, of course, that's why you have training camp to train for your opponent. No, to be able to make these significant different styles work for you. Joshua is very different than Fury, who's very different than Dubois. And from fight to fight, elite heavyweight, world champion heavyweights be able to fight the fight that beats them with the disadvantages that you have in size or in speed in some cases or in power in other cases. He's found what is necessary to beat them, and then I believe design a game plan to beat them and then execute that because Usyk's not hittable. He's not some elusive fighter. You get caught up
I
in
mean, he's
how much
elusive.
success he
He's
has.
elusive, but he gets hit. Yeah.
He's not some elusive fighter that can't be hit, is my point. It's not like, oh, he's not easy to hit. It's not like, oh, he doesn't move his head. He's just a lump.
He's
No,
not
but he's
Purnell, but
fucking hittable.
yeah,
I
yeah.
thought Joshua, after that fight, I mean, Joshua looked like he hadn't been in a fight, but he got beat. And Usyk was battered. But Usyk was winning rounds. Usyk bested Joshua twice. Usyk bested Fury twice by precisely doing what was too difficult for them to counter. In the second fight, especially with Fury, remember, Fury tried to tie him up and battle. That was the right strategy. Dubois had the right strategy. I thought Joshua in the second fight had the right strategy. The problem is he turned it against them. That is the genius of Usyk. He's able to turn what is the right strategy for you against you and make you have to figure something else out. And by then, the fight is done. So, yeah, he's touchable. Yeah, he's smaller. Yeah, he in some cases isn't as fast. In most cases, doesn't punch as heavy, but is figuring it out in a way that you're not taking something away from him. He's taking away from you what you think you're taking away from him with your strategy and having to rethink what the fuck you're doing. That's the
That's yes.
genius.
Yes.
So when you talk about, oh, he maybe matches up against Muhammad Ali and all this, I'm not walking down that road. This is not something I do, these different era fantasy
Yeah.
fights. It's absolutely impossible. What I will tell you, though, and here is where the comparison rings true for me. When you talk about greatness, it is not something that can simply be captured in the ring. It has to transcend the sport, or it isn't greatness by my definition of what great is. That expands beyond the boundaries of whatever is your initial attraction to the person. They've done something more than what can be accomplished in the ring. It is greater than what can be expected from an athlete. That is what Muhammad Ali embodies. That is what we remember about Muhammad Ali. And then the fight are a backdrop to that. Now, you want to talk about who's better at this or this element of that, or who would make what adjustment. We just can't know. And these are different fighters of different eras with different everything. But what is not different is that the world around them demands them to be something more than athletes. And that is where Oleksandr Usyk meets that mark. And he has a lot more life left before he has lived as many years as Muhammad Ali lived before he left this planet. So we don't know what these coming decades will bring. But as what we've seen thus far as evidence, he is a great fighter because he does transcend boxing. And it may not be felt as deeply in America as it is felt in Europe and specifically in his home country of the Ukraine. You must remember this man's country is at war. His people are losing loved ones, losing babies. I don't have any care about right now where you come down on the politics. Because I mean, you personally, Sean, but whoever's listening to this about Russia, Ukraine, who you back, who's right. None of this has anything to do with what I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about a man who loves his country, whose family is at war, who has stood on the front lines with a machine gun in his hand, prepared to kill the enemy, and then realize that what he can best do is keep the chins high and the hearts beating strongly and proudly for his countrymen by doing what he does best, which is fighting in the ring, not in the front lines of a military. And when he has completed boxing, right now is that case. He could retire. He could be an undefeated, three-time undisputed champion, go back and lay on a beach somewhere and chill, and you could not criticize him as an athlete. However, what I think has driven him even into this fight was knowing that the people of the Ukraine are looking to him for their very sense of hope. I saw that in the arena last night. I seen that
I
at
did
Wembley.
too with Manny Pacquiao. It was a pretty good weekend for legendary southpaws that have the entire nations on their back.
Right.
They did pretty well this weekend.
Manny Pacquiao did exactly the same in his era. However, I don't believe this is that time for Manny, but when it was that time, he did that thing. However, the
Right.
Philippines wasn't at war. That's
No,
an
no, no, no. But
extreme.
still a nation looking to one man and one man only for like true
Yeah,
inspiration.
they were looking
And,
to Manny
yeah,
for their manhood.
right. Yeah.
This is and he met that mark for them. He created that icon for them. In this moment, having those Ukrainian fans show up at Wembley with their country in peril, with their families being obliterated, who are not necessarily in the military, with their country at war for years and years, I saw in them the inspiration to keep going, to have hope, to think that they are the kind of fighters who can win a war that is going against them, to they can do the impossible. That's what he makes them believe. That's what was in their hearts. And they were competing with British fans who had the opportunity to have a four belt undisputed world champion for the first time ever and crowned on British soil at an iconic arena. And even still, it was 50-50 at best. And at sometimes I'd say 60-40 Ukrainian. And by the end of the fight, it might have been 70-30 Ukrainian. He was winning over British fans even in that moment. The way he conducted himself in the pre-fight process, he really never lost any sense of himself or confidence that what he came to do was bigger than himself. That's what I'm talking about. I left the press conference and I brought this because when I left the press conference in Wembley after the fight, these were littering the press conference. These were left all over because these Ukrainian fans bought their flags because this is what it meant to them. It was about believing they could win the impossible fight and they could all do something that nobody believed they could do. And when Usyk entered that heavyweight division, there's no way that anybody who is honest would ever say they thought he would be two-time undisputed heavyweight champion without having lost a fight. They are watching their man represent them to the world. That is greatness. We'll see what he does with the rest of these decades.
Yeah, man. Slava Ukraine, right? I believe that's how they say it. But just quickly for me to get back to the adjustments you were talking about and how brilliant they've been. Case in point, right away, the first punch he throws at Tyson Fury in both of their fights, straight left hand to the body, targets it over and over again. I don't know. I can't really recall any body shots against Daniel Dubois. So that just shows you how much he'll change his game up, how much he'll change his punch selection up, and in this fight, how much he changed his mass up with his own body, even. So yeah, brilliant fighter. Going forward, though, I and I know you'll love this idea. I want to see him fight because I believe he said he only has two fights left, and Daniel would be the first of those two. So now we're down to one, and I don't want it to be against Jake Paul. That's just me. I would like to see one of two, and Agit Kabayal deserves to be an honorable mention here. I'll mention him. But if it's going to be against a veteran, which is probably more likely, Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker can challenge him in areas other heavyweights cannot, in foot speed, quickness, IQ, and he's still a natural 240-pound plus heavyweight. He has power. So I've loved that fight. I've loved that fight since Usyk came to the heavyweight division because I think you'll get two guys that can move in there like light heavyweights, but in the heavyweight division, throwing heavyweight power. I think that's a wonderful fight, always have. and Parker is deserving. But he is choice number two. Choice number one for me is Moses Saitama, who would be jumping up 3 or 4 levels, who I do think will knock out Dillian White next month with his enormous advantage in speed and youth. He'd be jumping up a couple levels. A lot of people thinking biting off more than he can chew, but he on the eye test is wowing me so much, and I believe he's all the way up at number one with the WBO. Anyways, let's Canelo Floyd this thing, and why not? Let's Canelo Floyd. What? Usyk takes Itama to school, and Itama goes on to reign once he retires. Is that the worst thing in the world? It worked out pretty well for Canelo Alvarez. That would be the number one fight I'd like to see him take.
It's got to be Parker. It absolutely has to be Parker if there's any justice in the world. Fury does not deserve a third shot. That's fucking nonsense. Joshua, to his credit, isn't begging for one. Parker has waited his turn, waited too long, been the wallflower, the bridesmaid, and never the bride for too many fights. He lost his opportunity against Dubois. I think legitimately he was not a mandatory. He was a voluntary. The
Do
kid
wonder
got
what would have
sick.
happened in that fight, though. Do wonder.
Yeah, to be fair, in that fight, we don't know. I would at the time would be picking Dubois to be fair, but um, I don't think that this Usyk loss to Dubois really tells us anything about that fight. This guy Usyk is better than everybody. That's just it.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we get much information out of this. However, Parker 100% deserves a shot at this undisputed title before they do end up hitting the pond and
Even
scattering.
challenges him in areas of humility and character. Like
Yeah, I
even
mean he's
talent. Yeah,
patiently
yeah.
waiting, which is ironic, and he's the mandatory for the WBO. I mean, come on.
Yeah, is he the mandatory Saitama then? I feel maybe
Fuck
it's two
no.
different
No,
bodies.
no,
They're
it's
the
Joseph
mandatory at the
Parker.
same time.
Forgive me.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, no, no, and also don't do that. Don't do that to fucking Itama. No fucking way. Don't do that. Listen, man. If
Look it up the
maybe,
rankings.
no, even then, like it's just there's just no time. If Usyk decides that he's gonna carry on beyond whatever this next fight is, then maybe and he's obviously remained successful. Then maybe Itama gets a bite at it down the line. But I think there's a lot of people ahead of him. I think
Joseph
putting
Parker is the interim WBO champion. Itama's ranked number one with the so there you go. So yeah,
he's the
Parker has
mandatory.
precedence over Itama to get the title shot. Yeah.
This they are calling him that he's the mandatory. That's the thing. So it makes even more sense because if you're gonna continue, then you need to fight your mandatories. That's how Dubois became champion in the first place by Usyk not fighting his mandatory. So to
People in the
swerve
comments, you're
Parker,
on my side though, right? People in the comments, we're team Itama getting the fight over Parker, right?
no,
I'm appealing to the
no,
people right now. Yeah.
no, no, man. What are we even talking about? He's getting teed up for a Dylan White fight. Like maybe, I'll tell you what, I'll give you this. If Atama was fighting Fury next instead of White,
Right.
and then Joseph Parker got the fight with Usyk, and Usyk beat Parker, then I would entertain the Atama conversation after he beat Fury. But he's so far from having earned that, and he's not a superstar either. Like I get that
Yes. Yeah.
people
He's not
have
Canelo. Yeah.
some
Canelo was someone
desire.
out.
He's
And
not.
Canelo was a
Come on,
unified
guys.
champion.
Everybody
Canelo was
calm
the
down.
man in that division
Yeah,
when Floyd
exactly.
challenged him and
And
had over
people were
40
like really demanding,
fights.
like,
And
"Oh,
yeah, I know.
well, you're Floyd. You can't beat this one. He's bigger. He's all the stuff." Like, yeah, stop it. You know what I mean? Like,
He
and
told
I'm
me
not
stop.
saying this Atama won't be that one day, maybe one day fairly soon, but not today and not tomorrow. Maybe the day after, though. And you gotta work through the gears. It's just he's not even Canelo against
No,
Mayweather
no,
yet.
no.
You know what I mean? So come on,
Canelo
guys.
beat a legit guy in Austin Trout to unify in a huge
Exactly.
fight at the Alamo Dome.
And he's a
Like that,
much.
yeah. I know.
It's got to be Parker, and
All right.
if
I'm so
that
I
it's got
like
to be
I love
Parker.
that fight. All right.
Okay, yeah.
All right.
uh, but you're gonna hate it. They're gonna hate it. I'm gonna say it. You mentioned Jake Paul. He faced off against Usyk. We can't just ignore that. I think that's crazy that they let him get in the ring and have that face off. I don't know what that was for. I don't know if it was a television show they're coming out
It's a
with
great look
or
for
some kind of
Jake that
commercial for
Usyk
a video game.
respects him
What?
like that.
What?
It's a great look for Jake that Usyk respects him enough to
I don't
let him.
even, I don't know how that
Yeah,
happened.
you
Like,
think it's some money, something? I don't know. I don't know, but
did they not tell Usyk what was going to happen? Did they pay him?
he
That's what I'm
seemed
saying.
pretty
Is
cool
it
with
like a
it.
video game cover or something?
They're
Like,
both
it
on
couldn't be
undisputed,
any.
but
One thing I can tell you for sure, 1,000%, is that Alexander Usyk, Oleksandr, is not considering fighting Jake Paul. 1,000%, I will tell you that is not on the cards. That's not one of the things he's thinking about.
so in terms of when Usyk stops Dubois, there's a lot of people saying Dubois didn't show enough heart in this fight and he quit. And to compare it, Tim Tszyu got some of that flack, but on the same night, not quite as much flack. It was perceived in that he let it all hang out more before he retired on his stool compared to Dubois, who got stopped in the fifth. What'd you think, though, in the building?
The first person to say to me he quit was Derek Chisora. And I was taken aback. I wasn't expecting that. Of course, Chisora is always good for the thing that you're not meant to say
But to
being
be
said.
fair to him, he is all dog, and if anybody can gauge the dog of another fighter, someone like Derek Chisora could speak on it.
Sure, you can speak on it.
Yeah.
I disagree with it though. And it is tapping into a pre-existing narrative, so it's not unfair. It's not unfair to pose. However, in this case, I think it is unwarranted. Dubois was soundly beaten. He did get off the canvas after the knockdown that preceded the final knockdown. He did, when he got off the canvas, get aggressive. He didn't hold. He didn't try to survive the round. He tried to come back with more aggression. The punch that put him down was a hellacious hook. It wasn't a tap. He was already off his equilibrium from the shot before, and it was a clean, wind up, full body twisting hook from 20 pounds heavier than he had been previously. Usyk that landed clean. If you go watch that punch, and he still got to his knee, he still got up. He got, when he slumped over forward. By the way, all of us who watch boxing know when you go forward, that really means you're dead on your feet, right? He was out, I think, for a beat, which is when he was slumped over. But he's such a specimen. He's so conditioned, so built. That's what you mean, like when you say, oh, it's the conditioning that kept him going. It was the conditioning that kept him from falling on his face. He was asleep. Then he woke up, fell on his butt. Then he got to his knee, and he was, I think, trying to clear his head and didn't beat the 10 count. And yes, at the 10 count, he got up and walked over to his corner, but at that point, his head was clear. That's why it's a 10 count. Maybe if it would have been a 15 count, he gets up. But just because you get up at the 10 doesn't necessarily mean that you could have got up at the 7. And when you see what actually happened in this fight, those punches that put him down first and second time, the punch that ultimately stopped this fight was tremendous. And yes, I think he was on that knee trying to figure out like where he is, what's next. Now you can hop up at 7 or 8 and then stumble around, do what the internet will call the stanky leg, and just have the ref wave it off. But what also people didn't notice is that the corner threw in the towel. So if he had gotten up, and he didn't know it either, I'm not saying that he knew the towel had been thrown in, but it had been. And if he had gotten up, the fight wouldn't have continued. And you cannot say that you know he could get to his feet because he had gotten to his knee. Completely blank stare on his face. We've seen that before from Dubois. However, I think he was trying to collect his wits about him. And maybe even if he hears 9 and knows that he can potentially get to his feet, he doesn't know what to do when he gets up there. He may not have his balance to get onto those feet. And if he had gotten up, less than 20 seconds later, he's back on his ass. That's not a fight he's about to get up and win.
No.
And if you say that's quitting, I think you're a troll. I think you're being a little bit over your skis harsh. I think you're a hater. I think Dubois came in there and did the best that he could do. He delivered all he could deliver against a superior fighter who had outsmarted him and ultimately outworked him to a stoppage. He was not good enough. It wasn't that he was not brave enough. It was that not that he didn't have enough heart. It wasn't that he is a quitter. It was simply that he was not better than the other guy, and the other guy closed all the doors to the exit. The only way out of that fight was going to be this. And that's what happened.
What's that song?
Sometimes you got to just say, tip your hat to the guy who got knocked out and be like, he's 27. He'll be back and better. He gave all that he had. There are definitely things that I believe would have worked had he been able to stick to them. Maybe would have worked. Saw some flashes of some things working, but not nearly enough. Not anything that made me think if he had gotten up in that moment, he was going to go on to do anything but go back down. So just let the kid at 27, the man, come back and better. You don't have to trash him now. You don't have to start with this fucking he quit nonsense. I believe he will be back and he will be back better. And nobody has beaten Usyk. None of them. None of the best of anyone that anywhere had to offer has gotten over that mark. So this was Dubois' second shot, and he was defeated. Fine, man. It's actually a disrespect to Usyk to say that Dubois quit because he didn't quit. He got beaten by a better fighter who did the best job on the night and knocked him out. That's what happened. Put some respect on Usyk's name and stop working so hard to shit on Dubois.
What was that song back in the day? It was, I guess, your best wasn't good enough or something like that. But that's all that happened. And there's they're all dogs. They can all fight. They're all dogs in this sport, right? And but yeah, there's levels to it. But at the same time, Julio Cesar Chavez once quit against Oscar De La Hoya. Eric Morales quit against Manny Pacquiao. Those guys are as macho as they're as revered as macho as it gets in boxing. So it happens to the best of them. So it is what it is. I agree. I agree with your take. I don't. Yeah, leave it at that. I'll put it so.
Word up.